Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Candid Companion. This is Cleo Constantine.
And I'm Susanna Gabrielli.
And in this episode, we're going to share a bit about who we are, how we got into the sex industry, and where we are now, and how we've changed and grown. So a year and a half ago, we recorded a similar episode in our last podcast, Business or Pleasure, but we thought we would remind and update you on what we are all about.
And we're going to start with our relationship to each other. So we met in Berlin, where we are both based. We're both independent sex workers in Berlin. And you actually approached me, so do you want to tell that story?
Yeah, we were at Kit Kat, which is a iconic Berlin sex club.
Fetish.
Yeah.
It has a pool and a skylight.
And a sauna.
It's very extra.
Yeah, and I saw you walking through the crowd. I think it was a queer party. I saw you walking through the crowd. You were dressed head to toe in white, and you're like 6'1" tall. So you just stood out like very, very immediately. And I recognized you from your ads on Backpage, actually.
Oh, you little stalker.
I know. I had seen you on Backpage. Yeah, I had seen you on Backpage for ages, but thought you looked really cool and like didn't want to like introduce myself because I thought I'm too new and too much of a fangirl. So when I saw you at Kit Kat, I came up to you and said, "Hi, I think I know you." And you said, "Where from?" And I like whispered like, "Backpage."
Your memory is so good. I love it.
I do. I have a really creepy memory. And
this was how long ago? Maybe now, like
over 2 years ago.
Over 2 years ago. Yeah.
And you, I'll never forget this. You were like, you said to me, "Let's have a business meeting," and then you walked off without giving me like your contact details. And then the next day, I think I spent like 3 hours trying to find your contact details.
Oh my god! I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. I just thought it was like such a like cool move.
That does sound like a very cool move, but I think I was probably just in the clouds or something.
Yeah. Aquarius moment.
Yeah.
And then I think we met the next day.
Yeah, we had a lunch date.
Yeah.
I remember.
I was very hungover.
Yeah, we ate some Middle Eastern food.
Yes. Like that was like such a bad idea. It was so confronting and greasy, and I was just like, whoa.
Yeah. But nevertheless, regardless of that, I was so excited to meet you, and we just hit it off right away. And I remember we just spent hours and hours. I think on our first hang we spent 5 or 6 hours together just talking, and I had this like feeling like I just wanted to like tell you everything, and I was just so excited about this like new relationship. And we ended up sharing an in-call together, and then eventually I went traveling to Australia, and Cleo was from Australia. And so while I was away touring, we kept in contact over WhatsApp voice messaging. I was there for 3 months, so we kind of like really we were like pen pals.
Yes, that's what it felt like. And I think I was a little bit worried that it was just going to be like a, pen pal moment. I was really hoping that we were going to be like besties when you moved back to Berlin. And luckily that is what panned it.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, the rest is history. But yeah, we kept in touch. I was definitely excited to spend more time with you when I got back into town. And then I got back into town, and I think we were in a place where we had both been working a lot and both needed a vacation really bad. I had plans to go to Argentina, and I was kind of like, hopefully, just like, come. And you said yes, which, was a surprise, but so amazing. And we just had a beautiful honeymoon in Argentina. It was so lovely, except for the fact that Backpage was raided during our time there, which was, at the time, both of our main source of income.
Yeah.
So that was hugely stressful, but at the same time, I'm so glad we were kind of removed from our normal lives and had each other, because you really helped me process my feelings around it. I mean, it was hugely destabilizing and scary to have your main mode of income, which was advertising on Backpage, being removed from the internet overnight. But I really had the sense of that, you were really quite strong in that moment, I remember, and you just encouraged me that, we're gonna find a way, and it's gonna be okay, and they can't silence us, they can't shut, the government routinely tries to silence, sex workers, and does routinely raid online platforms. It's happened before with, Redbook, my Redbook, and Craigslist and Rentman as well have all been raided. But ultimately, the government cannot stop sex workers, and, they try so hard, but we are the world's oldest profession, and it's not going to happen.
It's interesting that Backpage features a lot in our friendship. Like, I met you because of Backpage.
It was definitely my main way of finding clients. Backpage works differently in different cities, but it was really good for me in Berlin.
But yeah, I saw you on Backpage. I approached you. It shut down while we were on our honeymoon, and we talk about it a lot in our podcast as well.
We did a duo, I think, in Berlin as well before I even went to Australia.
Yes, we did. 2.
Yeah, we did a couple. We've done a lot of duos together. We give an excellent duo. Yeah. Definitely book us for a duo if you're in Berlin.
You want the real deal.
Give you the time of your life. And yeah, ever since we came back, we've just been very, very deep, close friends, like best friends for life, for sure. Yeah. We're not going anywhere, if I have anything to say about it. We're work wives, we're Twitter wives, and I'm just so happy to have you in my life.
Yeah, obviously feeling mutual.
And yeah, as we kind of got to know each other, we realized that we have a lot in common, even though we do come from extremely different places and have different experiences, but a lot of similarities in like ideologies. And so we're going to share a bit about how we got into sex work. So you go first, Cleo.
Sure. I'll start by saying, before I started in the sex industry, I was potentially a bit of an unlikely person to become an escort, because I had ideologically been very much like what's considered a radical feminist, and a sex worker, exclusionary radical feminist, a SWERF, if you will. And what that means is that you're someone who is very much against the sex industry. You are very much philosophically against the concept of the purchase and sale of sex, that you see it as a form of, rape, essentially, rape for money, and that consent is not possible under this paradigm where, it's acquired by payment. I was very passionate about this. I was very strident, very outspoken. I got into a lot of arguments with people about it on the regular. And that was the type of feminist that I was. It's a second wave, very much associated with the 1970s, with consciousness raising, which is, that there was so much of an emphasis in the 70s with looking at the structural oppression that women experience, and, talking about things like makeup and femininity and labor and, sex and pornography, and the sex industry was very much a big part of that. So yeah, that was my belief system.
You said this one thing about when you were a SWERF and you saw sex workers who chose to be in the sex industry as handmaidens to the patriarchy.
Yes.
I loved that.
I know.
I want that on my LinkedIn.
Patriarchy handmaiden.
The handmaiden of the patriarchy. Yeah.
Yeah, I really believed that that sex workers were either like, I really had a very black and white way of looking at it. I saw them as victims, and if you weren't a victim, then you were like pimp lobbyist, basically. Like, you were extremely privileged and you were using your privilege to make money, but truly everybody else was suffering and hated it, that sort of thing. Very black and white thinking. And because of Facebook, a lot of stuff that I've written over the years comes up, and it's really quite incredible that I hold like the exact opposite beliefs now. So I remember I was working a job. I was living in Auckland at the time, and Auckland, New Zealand, and I was made redundant from my job, which is when your position is no longer needed. And so I needed to make money, obviously, and it was at a bad time of year, and I was expecting to move to Europe, so I found myself without as much money as I expected. And I had a flatmate at the time, and she was working in the industry, and we'd had many long conversations that I'm sure were really painful for her, where I was just talking about how, like, it's these men are gross, disgusting, awful, taking advantage of women, consent is not possible if you're being paid. And I really respected her as an intelligent person, as an intelligent woman, because she just explained to me that, she explained her side of the story, and I would often just be like, well, I still don't like it, I have a lot of shame about that now, to be honest. But yeah, so I personally think that for myself, and I think for a lot of people who are SWERFs, I wonder, why did I have such an interest in the sex industry? Why was that my hill to die on, And I think it's because I did actually, if I was being honest with myself, I had an interest in the sex industry and working in this line of work, because I approached my friend when I realized I didn't have as much money as I'd hoped, and said to her, do you think I'd be able to work for you? And she had said to me, like, yes, that's possible, probably. And she sat down and talked to me about it for, many, many hours. I'm very appreciative of her that she took the time to do that. And when she answered all my questions, I found that I still was interested. I asked her questions like, what do you do if you don't want to see a client? And she said, well, then you don't see the client. You don't have to justify yourself.
Groundbreaking. Yeah,
and I said, wow, it's not rape. Isn't that amazing?
You can have boundaries.
Yeah, you can have boundaries. She explained boundaries to me, because I really thought that once the escort was paid, that the client could do whatever they wanted. But I found out that that was not at all the case, that working as a sex worker is defined by boundaries. And so I was thinking to myself, whoa, wow, I think I'm still considering this. And when the time came for me to work at the brothel, I was very scared the night before, but I just told myself, it's just sex, and if you can't do it, we'll just work something else out. And on the day I went to work, I saw my first client, and I realized it was not difficult for me to do this. In fact, I found it quite enjoyable, and that it is just sex. And I enjoyed the camaraderie that I experienced in the brothel as well. And I realized that I had been wrong. Oh my gosh, I realized I had been wrong about my opinions of the sex industry. And I worked in this brothel for about a month in Auckland, and then I had expected that I would go back to doing some other form of work, and that this was just a way to get some money for my move to Germany. But when I moved to Germany and I had enjoyed about 6 months of, just getting settled, I realized I didn't want to go back to doing the type of work I was doing before, which was working in a sort of HR management type of role. And I decided that I wanted to keep working as an escort and that it was a good fit for me. And I haven't done another type of work since then. It's been about 3 years now. So yeah, that was my journey.
It's pretty crazy that you went straight to the brothel from being a SWERF. Like, that is very dramatic.
It's true.
Working in a brothel, even within the sex industry, is quite, it can be a stigmatized position. I think like certain sex workers wouldn't dare work in a brothel because brothels tend to represent, you know, high volume, seeing lots of clients, and, you know, even within the sex industry, that can be like in a more extreme form of work.
I think it's got a lot to do.
Valid.
Sure, I think it's got a lot to do with where I was in New Zealand.
It's true. They're much more common there.
It's very common to start in the sex industry working in a brothel because otherwise the administration and everything would be way too complicated for a complete newbie to start off.
Yes.
So I think it's got something to do with that I worked in New Zealand where the sex industry is completely decriminalised and brothels are everywhere. There's a brothel in every suburb. So there's that. I think also, yeah, it was a big jump for me to go from thinking that I was going to be raped to deciding to do it. Because I think even being a SWERF, I always had a strong interest in sex and sexuality.
And you're a freak.
Yeah, it's true.
It speaks to your personality that you did such a rapid 180.
It's so true. I have to say there's one thing about me is that I might hold one opinion one day and then the next day do the complete opposite and really not feel like I'm
not stubborn.
I'm not at all. I'm the opposite of stubborn. I'm incredibly, I don't know, what's the word?
Flexible.
Incredibly flexible, and I love to try new things. I'm always wanting to push my own boundaries.
Yeah. It's true that from a North American perspective, I think working in brothels would have scared me, and it's funny how it's different. In North America, I don't think that most girls start working in brothels. Like a certain type of person will work in a brothel, sure, but they are more of a taboo than they are in the Southern Hemisphere. They're much more common in the Southern Hemisphere, and we're going to talk about it in our next episode on decrim and working in brothels in New South Wales. But yeah, for me, I don't think I could have dreamed of starting work straight out working in a brothel.
I think that's the funny thing about my journey is that I didn't start out with like selling nude photos. I didn't start out with
soft entry.
I didn't have a soft entry. I didn't start with dancing. Well, no, that's not true. I did dance for like 5 seconds when I was like 21 and realized I do not have an aptitude for this type of work. But yeah, that was just a total nothing moment. But yeah, I did basically go from working in an office to working in a brothel and
iconic.
Yeah, really did go from 0 to 100 real quick.
I love that.
Yeah.
I did not. I wasn't a SWERF, but I did grow up in Canada in a fundamentalist Christian family, evangelical, Protestant. My family was and is very religious, and it's not just a part of their lives, it really is just their whole lives. And I was very religious as well until I was 20, actually. So a couple of years ago. But yeah, I was very religious. I was very pious. I remember, the World Vision channel being on the television a lot when I was a child, and they would, feature these kind of sensational exposés of poverty in third world countries, asking people to donate money to support, families, which, I mean, I'm not sure. I think, there's maybe some good work that happens there. They would often feature like victims of sex trafficking and just very sensationalized stories about, girls sold into the sex trade. And it just broke my young heart. I was horrified, obviously, quite naturally. And it really stuck with me. And I remember, wanting to put my life's work into preventing this from happening and to, rescuing girls from the sex industry. I was so horrified at the thought. And also a big feature of my youth, or like a big thing in my family, was maintaining sexual purity for marriage. Like, it was absolutely not an option for me to have sex before marriage if I wanted to get into heaven. And it was, essentially a full-time job for me to go to a secular high school and, remain pure and a virgin. Everybody knew. People would talk about me. Guys would try and, kind of like flirt with me and try and get me to go out on dates with them. And it was stressful, but I was very good at being repressed. I think I was very pious. It was almost like a masochism thing for me. I really didn't jerk off. I really was like on the straight and narrow path.
And a tease.
And a tease, yeah, it's true. I would go on dates with guys, you know, I would go so far as to like make out with them in their car. Like I remember, I would like guys would drive me home and I'd be in my driveway, making out with a guy, and then we'd get so far, and then, you know, his hand would be in my belt loop, and I'd be like, okay, good night, and they'd be like, what? No, and I was like, I told you, I'm saving sex until marriage. Like there was absolutely no way that I was going to lose my virginity to a man.
Full stop or?
Full stop. Yeah. There really wasn't a way. There wasn't a way for me to lose my virginity to a man. So up until I was 20, I was very religious. I remember a pastor once even saying to me, and I'll never forget this, he was giving a sermon and he said, you know, people always wonder, you know, what am I meant to do with my life? What's my purpose, Lord? You know? And he said, you know, if you want to know your purpose, ask yourself, what is it about this life that breaks your heart the most, that you're not okay with? And I immediately thought, I'm not okay with sex trafficking. And I want to throw my life's work into preventing sex trafficking. So it's always been a passion of mine. I was also always a feminist, even as a Christian. I was very concerned about justice and women's rights. And I decided to study women's studies in Montreal, Quebec, which Quebec is, you know, the most secular province of Canada. My parents were like, oh, you know, French Canadians, they're very perverse. You know, they kind of have this reputation. They're awesome. I mean, Quebec is definitely the coolest province of Canada, in my opinion. So I went to university, and I remember people in my church being like, oh, but isn't it going to be filled with lesbians? And I was like, well, you know what? If it is, like, I'm just going to drop out or, like, change majors, you know?
Did you really say that?
I did. I really did to a couple people, yeah. So I moved to Montreal. I enroll in the women's studies program. My classes are 100% filled with lesbians, and I quickly realized, I don't even know, I remember this period of my life kind of happening. It was almost like a dream. People were asking me, you know, are you gay or straight? And I was like, no one knows me here. I don't have to be like a good Christian girl. I can be whoever I want to be here. And then I don't know, I got a good friend group of lesbians, and then one day I just lost my virginity to a woman and woke up the next day and I was like, oh shit, like I'm going to hell. But even though I was mortified and terrified, I did feel a huge sense of relief. I really don't think I ever would have lost my virginity to a man. I was so good and so trained at saying no, but I was not prepared to say no to a woman. And I did realize that I am queer, and I came out as queer. And then I basically had to second guess everything I knew to be true, because at that point in my life, I realized, okay, you know what? There's a lot of pressure being a Christian. You know, you really are kind of encouraged to have all the answers and minister to your friends all the time. And I was like, you know what? I don't have all the answers right now. I'm very confused, so I'm just going to put my faith on hold. And when I put my faith on hold, I, you know, and started living my life as a queer person, you know, like dating women. And I really had to second guess everything that I once thought to be true. And part of that was my feelings about sex, naturally, and the sex industry. And there were a number of girls in the women's studies program. Actually, I dated a girl whose ex was a professional escort. And I realized that feminism and sex work could go hand in hand. That, you know, there isn't just this one view of sex work within feminism, which is that it's exploitative, like you were saying, and, you know, patriarchal. I do think that sex work largely still is patriarchal. There's like, I don't think that it's like a pure thing, like a pure...
It's not feminist.
No.
We would never claim for it to be.
No, but at the same time, you know, I realized under capitalism, like why should women be held at fault for, you know, doing what they need to do to survive, first of all, and, you know, taking power back. You know, women are always fetishized and sexualized, and why shouldn't they be able to decide who and when accesses their body and get something in return? This was very, like, mind-blowing to me. And I essentially started in the sex industry very softly. I was deeply broke. I was in Montreal putting myself through school, working 7 days a week at a cafe and just making, you know, very bad money. So I was interested. I was like, domination. I could do that. Dominating men. That sounds great. That was my initial interest. I imagined myself as this strict dominatrix and having very little physical bodily contact with men, but just ordering them around and getting them to clean my apartment. And that really appealed to me. And I did that. And, it was very slow going. I really took my time. I was such a newbie, and I was really just I threw myself into it, but I really did like learn by trial and error. So I started meeting, sub clients. I met a couple guys who were just like, oh, honey, no, before I really became a dom. I am naturally dominant. However, it was still a learning curve, learning how to do it professionally. And I was very young. So I took my time learning. I then worked at a strip club for a while. Dancing, I'm also really bad at it. It was an amazing time in my life. I really loved working with other girls and just being in the club. But like, wow, that is such a hustle.
Such a hard.
It's some of the hardest work I think I've ever done. It's really. And then did some massage, but really it was definitely years before I transitioned to full service sex work, which is full service is, fucking for money, basically. Having sex, penetration for money. And I definitely I took my time. I was nervous. I even when I was a young sex worker, I definitely held the opinion that if I was an escort, for example, that I had to just forfeit all rights to my body, and that that the client could just do whatever he wanted with me. And also I didn't even identify as straight at all at that time. I am attracted to men and women. I am very queer, but it was, confronting. I definitely had my earliest relationships with women. So it was confronting the idea of having sex with men for money. But you know what? I took my time and I met a lot of wonderful people in the industry. And I guess it kind of happened by accident when I first did full service. I had a client who I was comfortable with, and he just kind of like asked me if he could take me home for this amount, whatever. And I realized I could do it, and that actually it's often a very positive exchange, and that that it wasn't so scary, and that that I really enjoyed having kind of like a positive consensual adult exchange. And so currently today I am an escort first and foremost, and I'm grateful to the sex industry because it really did give me financial independence to be able to change my situation and move and travel and focus on other interests and projects. And so it's been a couple years now, a couple more, around 5 years now. But with a very, very slow, gradual, I did not dive right in. I really took my time.
I think it's interesting to hear with both of our stories, there's a common theme that comes up that we both had an interest in the sexual exploitation of women and girls.
Yeah.
And that we ended up in the very profession that we thought was the most abject.
I really did think that I had a kind of a revelation at one point where I was like, if I do want to, I was in a feminist program, and I was like, if I want to do advocacy within sex work and support sex workers, I need to kind of know what it's like. Like, I don't think that you should always be on the outside. And I hold that belief today. I believe that sex workers should be the ones that support sex workers, and we know our needs best, and etc. So, I don't think, we were talking about this before. I don't think it was necessarily like that I had this burning desire to have sex with men for money that was like, gave me an initial interest. I still hold some or a lot of the same views about, like being deeply concerned with social justice within the sex industry, and sex work is so marginalized still, and there's a lot that I would like to see change, and I'm interested in seeing that happening. But definitely I do feel like, since being a sex worker, I'm in a much better place to kind of like make judgment calls on what needs to be done. And both of us, it was a lack of money that kind of led us both into the sex industry. It really wasn't anything else,
It was a lack of money that brought me in for sure. That was the push.
Yeah.
But if I'm being honest with myself, I always was curious about the work of the sex industry. And I personally think a lot of, to be honest, I think a lot of anti-porn, anti-sex industry feminists are, if they're being honest with themselves.
This is a hot take, Cleo.
Yeah, it's a hot take. I mean, I do really wonder, someone like Gail Dines, you know, if anybody is not familiar with the feminist Gail Dines, she is a she is a anti-sex industry feminist. She's at the University of Manchester. She's written many books. Pornoland is one of them. And it's all about, you know, the brutality of what these women endure on camera. But I always felt that she writes these long, you know, passages, like describing the numerous penetrations and the degradations and the fluids. And I'm just like, Gail, you know.
Gail, if you're listening to this right now,
be honest with yourself. Oh my God. There's a story she tells where she's like, I fell to the ground weeping and beating my fists on the floor, wailing, why no? And I'm just like, just masturbate, Gail, you know?
Yeah.
Just let the hysteria out.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I do think maybe that's true. For myself, I think my initial interest was feminism, just really supporting women. And it was kind of like a fun, subversive jump for me who, you know, spent so much time saving sex until marriage to, you know, really pushing myself to the opposite degree to really see sex completely differently. It was very exciting for me to like go from seeing it as a sacred thing I needed to protect at all costs to being able to take sex back for myself and be like, no, actually, like I'm a very sexual person. I'm going to decide who and when gets to access my body. I'm going to advance my life through sex.
I think likewise that I also had a very religious upbringing, and probably not to the same extent of yours, but I definitely was expected to be a virgin till marriage, and I definitely was not by the time I started. But even some of my friends had said to me, you know, you tend to cycle through lovers quite quickly. Have you considered working as an escort? And I was like, oh my God, how very dare you. And
being a slut is not a requirement of this job, but
definitely not.
It can help, I guess.
I think I at the very least knew that I enjoyed having sex and that I wasn't necessarily so sentimental about only doing it with one person at a time.
Yeah.
So I think also I probably had some, you know, shame to process. And I've just got to say, if you have any sexual shame, I think working as a sex worker tends to expedite the process of ridding yourself of that.
It's true.
It would be so difficult for somebody to say to me, like, well, you're a fucking whore. I'd be like, yeah, like, I know.
Yeah.
It's quite empowering, to be honest, to occupy a space that is so degraded with like a level of strength and dignity and owning it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you just learn so much about, you know, kind of human nature and like attraction and connection, and it really teaches you a lot of lessons like straight off the bat. It really changes your opinion of sex.
Of just humans as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And humanity and
attraction and desire. And
absolutely. Yeah. We've spoken about this before, that how aesthetic attraction is so different to sexual attraction.
Intimate connection. Yeah.
How you learn very quickly when you do this job that you can have incredible sex with people that you're not visually attracted to.
That you would never imagine. Yeah.
You learn a lot about the nature of sexuality and attraction. I think I'm grateful for that. I try not to forget that.
Absolutely. And you can find something really attractive in everybody.
Absolutely. This job has taught me that. Yeah.
And so anyway, here we are now, two blooming Berlin-based business women. I'm really thankful that I met Cleo, and our relationship has been such a game changer for me in the last couple of years that I've known her. I was quite isolated in the sex industry. You know, I didn't have that many close friends. It was always kind of like my thing and my means of independence and making money. But only when I met Cleo was I really, did I feel like I could really take it to the next level and make like a serious career out of it, you know? And just having her at such a close proximity really just kind of erased any lingering kind of like shame about, or like, you know, wanting to like hide what I do for work from my friends. Like having a close friend in the industry is really so valuable. And, you know, just how like I feel like we are such soundboards for each other. You know, we can talk, to have somebody that understands so intimately the ins and outs of what is an incredibly intense job. You know, it's unlike any other job. If you haven't done it, you just probably can't relate, you know, like there's no way. So
it's so true. Before I met you, I had some relationships with the other women who were working in the brothel, but I didn't have any close sex worker friends. And I had close like civilian friends, but they really couldn't relate to what I was doing or what I was going through or the dynamics or any of that. And I have to say to anyone who is thinking about entering the industry or anyone who is a worker now, really find your people, find your community, find close friends in the industry. Be careful.
Definitely be careful.
Be careful.
Who you trust.
You know, there are also, you know, not so safe people out there as well. But it's really important to find your community because this job can be so isolating.
Yeah, having good friends is going to be your most valuable resource. Probably.
Definitely. And also seek out community like organizations if you can.
Yeah, 100%. So thank you so much for listening to our personal narratives. We're really excited to continue with this project, the Candid Companion. We're going to be hitting you with a lot of political episodes very soon. Our thoughts about different political models, from decriminalization, we both worked in New South Wales, to the Nordic model, and so
legalization as well.
Yeah, I mean, we find it really fascinating, and we do think it's very important for people to understand the differences between political models. So just definitely stay tuned for that.
But it is about to get a lot more theory heavy.
Yeah, buckle up. So we are still collecting donations for this project. We have a GoFundMe that is linked on both of our Twitters, and we're collecting money for editing costs and photo shoots and hosting costs. So please consider donating. And you can find our GoFundMe on our Twitters, and you can also contact us if you have comments or questions about this podcast. We would love to hear from you. My Twitter is @ZuzuGabrielli, so that's @ZuzuGabrielli.
And I'm Cleo Constantine, that's @CleoConstantine. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Bye.